We're going to get into the ritual proper. And your ritual team for today is myself, my name is Kimberly, and Jamie and Aubrey, and we are assisted by David, who is helping us with our technologies. So I'm going to begin by lighting a chalice.
Our social distancing need not be spiritual distancing. We gather in this space created by our spirits to reinvent the physical space created by our bodies. Each candle we light individually becomes one shining light to bring us together today. Blessed be.
Hello. So you might have, if you were here earlier, you might have had someone ask you to grab some water. If you haven't yet, right now is a great time to do that. If you don't have water available or you just don't feel like it, you can definitely do this with your imagination. Everything's fine. So in common with each of our bodies is the capacity to grab a hold of questions and concerns, stretch them into lines of tension across our bodies, and kind of ribbon up our days with them. As much as Hermes can appreciate a good tingle as much as anyone else, and this business of the body remembering helps us build those connections and solve problems, some of these will distract from our work today. So let's start with the tech. If you have questions about how to use Zoom for this ritual, such as being able to raise your hand using a button in ritual, being able to use a thumbs up in ritual, being able to chat one of the hosts, it's totally fine. We all started somewhere. Please take a moment, if you are able to type them into the Zoom chat, either to David, who has a message that should be popping up at the bottom of your screen, also showing you how to do this, or to myself. When you've completed that, if you can give us a thumbs up or a hand up, that would be great. David's got some specific directions in there. This is specific to being able to get a hold of us as ritualists during the ritual without contacting the entire group. This is useful because the next thing I'm about to ask you is a question about Hermes as patron. If you have questions that you want read about what Hermes would be like as a patron for Gaia community, or you want to do a stump speech for Hermes for Gaia community, please type them into the chat to either David or myself now. If you can indicate whether or not you want your name read along with the question, we'll be reading them at a later point in ritual. You can send these questions as they come to you later. However, we do request that you do so, sending them either directly to David or myself or one of the other ritualists, so that we're not sending lots of bing, 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 adding to our environment during trance. Thank you. We have let go of a few of our first questions. Now, grabbing that water or thinking about water as you have it, I would like to ask you to take a break from looking at your screen. I'm still going to look at the screen because I want to see your beautiful faces and because I already know how to do this without staring into my cup. But consider looking down into your water or closing your eyes to imagine what looking into the water would be like, and see the outline of the bottom of your cup or bowl. Notice any light reflecting off of the water, the colors of these reflections in the top, or any marks or scuffs in the bottom. I encourage you to think of any other questions, frustrations, concerns, griefs, aches, pains, or later to-do items. Either taking a finger, a pen, the match from your candle, whatever you have is fine. Move it through the water. Think about pouring the tension from each of these moments, any sort of gosh dang it, into the water. It doesn't have to go away forever. Sometimes our worries are useful. Maybe it can go away forever, but either way, we're pouring that tension and those moments from the day that might distract us from our next step into the cup and washing them away for now. I'll be certainly available if we need them again after the ritual. We are purified.
I invite you to close your eyes and become aware of your body. Breathe deeply and let your awareness drift downward through your legs and feet to your connection with the earth. Dive down through the floor, through the dirt and crust of the earth, past rock and magma, deep into the molten core. The earth pulses with warmth here. Let it fill you and bring it back up through the ground, the floor, your feet and legs, up to the center of your being and throughout your body. Now notice how your body supports your spirit. A breath brings life-giving air. A beat of your heart moves blood through your veins. An electrical pulse makes connections to become your thoughts. Take a deep breath and become aware of your thoughts. All the thoughts and ideas and chatter going on inside your brain. All of these thoughts manifest from electric pulses, neuron connecting to neuron, sparks arising in the body of your brain. You might begin to imagine that you can follow the pulse of your thoughts. Follow that spark through the landscape of your mind. As you take your next deep breath, you might visualize the inside of your mind, your consciousness as a nexus of these beautiful, powerful sparks. And then, when you breathe in, you might visualize each of the other people gathered together with us today as their own constellations of thought and energy. We are scattered over many places, but we are connected by a network of electrons, more bright sparks in motion. You might imagine the electronic connections that bring you to our online nexus. Your senses hear your fellow Gaians and see them. See in your mind's eye how that happens. Strings of data pulse through a wire or the air to connect you to the internet, where they are further sent to Zoom's computers, which hold our images and voices to be retransmitted. With your next deep breath, imagine that you could push a part of your consciousness, your mind, into that network. You can let your spirit ride along with that data. It joins other constellations of sparks, joining into a bright and busy river of thought and electricity. It zips along until it joins my spirit and the spirits of your fellow Gaians. Be in this nexus we create this afternoon. Your body will be there when you need it again.
Our ritual today will take place in this virtual space, this nexus created by the union of thought, electron, light. We can imagine this space as a shifting landscape, a storehouse of possibility, a treasury of image and imagination. In this liminal space, we build our circle, we build our temple. Imagine us together in a place sheltered from the rush of information flowing around us. You might imagine that the space we share is filled with an ambient energy, that this energy can be shaped by the effort of thought and will. Let us gather this energy and give it direction. As we work with it, let it become a bright circle swirling around us, extending, raising over our heads, reaching down below our feet, becoming a sphere of peace and protection, of intention. Let this sphere turn away the energies of distraction and ill intent. Let us welcome in energies and thoughts and information that supports our work today. With that, our circle is cast. Blessed be.
Blessed be. As we call the elements today, we don't tie them to a specific direction. We invite the spirits to join us in our circle, taking useful shapes and becoming part of the fabric of our magical space. As we welcome these spirits, you might visualize them differently than I do. You might visualize them in the forms of beings, objects, magical tools, or material, enriching and enlivening our space. Into our circle, we call air. We call to the spirits of thought, of words, of images, of imagination. Air allows us to see and sense the world around us and within us. Air brings us clarity, bring us openness, bring us creative, fruitful possibility. Hail air. Into our circle, we call the spirits of fire. We call fire as light, as warmth, as the first spark of something that ignites a new change. Bring us initiative, bring us assertiveness, and bring us love that looks like bravery. Hail fire. Into our circle, we call the spirits of water. We call the spirits of calm. We call the spirits of serenity. We call cooling stillness and gradual change. Bring us this cooling stillness, bring us serenity. Hail water. Into our circle, we call the spirits of earth. We call earth as structure. We call earth as shape. We call earth as support. Earth, bring us the ability to make manifest our ideas and desires. Bring them to fruition in abundance. Hail earth. Thank you to all of these spirits.
We call to Hermes, the communicator, Hermes, the messenger. He who was there when we first started to reach out to the other people across the distance.
We call to Hermes the magician, Hermes the crafty one, thrice great. Hermes of the golden wand, Hermes of the mighty word.
We call to Hermes, busy one, comrade of the feast, giver of good things, watchful, helpful. He who is remembered as the thief by the world, but forgotten as son of Maya, a goddess giving birth in exile in a cave in rural Arcadia.
He was there in the smoke signals and drumming codes. He was there in the first writings chiseled into stone tablets.
Bearing that winged staff they call caduceus, the herald's staff, as if we wouldn't notice the wonders he worked into being.
He who was precocious, but still yet a child, remembered forever as a thief, for a fast one pulled against his half-brother, Apollo, the shiny one, who was born a heaven away and raised by their father Zeus, given a plate at the table and a good word, never even asked to do Zeus's deliveries or dirty work.
He was there in the ink on papyrus, on paper. He was there in the days when written messages spoke of love, of war, of trade, of philosophy, science, and mathematics.
Clever in speech he was and skilled at the oath, twisting words, shaping worlds, connecting and inventing.
He could have stayed in Arcadia, a local god, Hermes of the quick wit, discerning in his magic, generous and reliable, a good host and guest. But the Arcadians themselves are often forgotten, their might ignored, called backwards, wedged in between history by Sparta, Corinth, and Athens.
He was there when the printing press spread the written word further and literacy with it. He was there in the tap, tap, tap of the first telegrams, in the click and whir of the rotary phone.
Opener of waves, he moves swiftly down roads we have not yet imagined. The wind of his wake whispers desire, possibility, a chance to become.
Hermes took his chance. He understood the deal. Hang up your Arcadian story, bow your head, and trade in your reputation, and you can take your place in history. Messenger and herald, renowned among the gods of Olympus, you can sit at your father's table and share the bounty of the heavens.
He was there in the first radio waves that brought audio and video into our homes from far away. He was there in the touch-tone foam that led to the first modems, to the beep and screech of the dial-up connection.
He was there in the stones marking boundaries between the safe and the unknown. He was there giving a call, leading us to transcend borders, boxes, roles, traditions.
Messenger of the blessed, you made your deal. Apollo's cattle for a lyre, Arcadia for Athens. Living among those who did not understand your cleverness, who tarnished your good name, you seized your opportunity to be generous, to deliver mortals from suffering.
He is here in the internet we use today that we depend upon for so many things.
We call to him as the crafty one. Hermes, teach us to speak with your subtlety, to bind the fractious or loose the constricted.
Hermes Akakisios, remind us how you learned that it cannot hurt you. We are all more than our parents' children, the things we did to survive, and the skills we each wish we had learned by easier means.
We call to you through the wires, through the radio signals, and through our combined spirits. Hermes Angelos, Hermes Dioktoros, join us here in our nexus.
We call to you through our dreams and secrets, with our hopes and our hungers, with our combined need to know the world for what it could be. Hermes Logios, Hermes Trismegistus, support our work today.
We call to you, please deliver us from those who would lie to and gaslight us when we are already breathing through masks and with our heads on fire. Through our combined whispers, cries, and shouts, Hermes Akakisios, Doterean, teach us to deliver one another from evil.
Hail Hermes.
Hail Hermes.
Hail Hermes.
So now in our virtual space together, having attained the attention of the powers that we wish to have the support of in today's work, I invite you to take a journey with me. For this portion of the ritual, you may wish to make yourself comfortable in whatever way you like. You may wish to take up a comfortable seat or a stance, to lie down. You might want to turn your lights out, turn your camera off. Whatever you need to do in order to be comfortable for the next few minutes, please take your time and do it now. Making offering the smoke of frankincense in hopes that Hermes will look kindly on our efforts.
And I'm making offering of coffee.
So settle in. Take a deep breath. Hold it for a moment and then let it go. Sending tension out, sending distraction out with it. And on your next deep breath, allow your body to settle, to take a comfortable position, to arrange your arms and legs as you need, to slip into a relaxed posture. letting your breath free you from lingering worries or concerns. Breathe deep and relaxing, letting your mind become relaxed but attentive. You might close your eyes, find a soft focus in your vision, and listen to the sound of my voice. As you listen, you might find images arising in your inner vision, showing you this story that I am telling, showing you perhaps a story of your own. Allow your attention to drift to those inner visions. Let your mind show you what you need to see. Listening to the sound of my voice, noticing other sounds that may come to you, noticing where your attention leads you. And as you take your next deep breath, let your mind return to this nexus space, this temple, this circle that we've built together, this sacred space that we share. Let it fill your mind's eye. Look around with that inner vision and allow yourself to notice who and what shares this space with you. What do you see here? Do you notice the elements present in this space? Do you feel the blessing of the deities? Are there other spirits here with you, allies or guides? What does your space feel like? Take a moment to simply be inside this space. Know it for a safe place. It is built for you, by you, that will support and provide you with what you need. Today we will journey from space. Today we journey to the gates of the land of dream to seek the hospitality and counsel of Hermes. You may meet with others on your journey, fellow travelers and friends. You may wish to give gifts or receive them, to make offerings. Take a moment, gather your resources. The giving of gifts is sacred here. What do you bring? When you're ready, find your way out of this space. Perhaps there will be a door or a gate, perhaps a path. Perhaps this place comes so close to the gates of dream that you see them standing here in the walls of your temple. They are very close. Look around you. See the way to dream ahead of you. Look. There are two gates that lead to the land of dream. One carved of pale ivory, the other carved of glowing golden horn. Someday you may pass through these gates, but today we invite dreams to come to us. The ivory gate is the gate of false visions and fancies. The gate of horn brings true dreams, omens, knowledge of what is to come. Through these portals, Hermes sends dreams to the sleeping. Today, we ask him to send dreams to us in our meditation. Turn your attention to that gate of golden horn. At its side, you may find a bowl, an altar, a table, somewhere that you may leave a gift, an offering in return for the gifts of knowledge given in sleep. Make your gift and look around you. Find a comfortable place. Find a place to sit, to stretch out. Find a place to wait for dreams to come. And you find yourself settling in to this comfortable, welcoming spot. Letting yourself relax. Letting yourself notice your breathing, deep and even. Soon enough, you may find your eyes closing, your breath deepening. Soon enough, you may slip into sleep and wait for dreams to come. And when you dream of a mountain cave, a pleasant cave, dry and safe. When you dream of the cave of Maya, where Hermes was born. What has become of it since the gods who once lived here moved away? Has it been kept as a shrine? Has it been left sacred and empty? Does it provide shelter to others who need it now? Reach out with your dream senses. Perhaps you will feel the echoes of divinity in this place. Perhaps something left behind from the days when the gods sheltered here. Our story begins in this cave. Infant Hermes planning the daring tricks that will get him noticed by the rest of his family. Look around you. What do you discover? If you listen, you might hear echoes of the young gods' laugh, the graceful goddesses' cradle songs. You breathe in, you might still smell or taste the burnt offerings he made here, feasting on smoke as the gods do. You might even catch the echoes of Apollo's cattle lowing, the bright god's surprise when he found this infant before him, responsible for his loss. You might catch the echoes of the music of the lyre. You might begin to wonder what it was like. Why does a child steal his brother's things? What did he want? What did he get? Look around you. What can you learn here in this cave that was Hermes' nursery? Perhaps you close your eyes for a moment. Perhaps the dream moved you, as dreams do. Perhaps you heard a call that brings you onward from this place. till you find yourself on a road, on a path, stretching between rocky, hilly fields where sheep and goats are kept. Find yourself in Arcadia. Look around you now. What do you see? What sounds come to your ears? The baa of the flocks, the bells on goats, the sound of herders calling, the wind rustling in the grass. This place, too, is part of Hermes' story. Here he walked as a young god, a god among the shepherds and farmers. The people of Arcadia calling him the ready helper, the luck bringer, the glad-hearted one. Here he might have carried a lamb home on his shoulders. There he might have crouched for a game of dice. In Arcadia he watched the flocks and he wandered. Where might he go? Who might he meet? What might he become? Breathe in, taking in the freedom, the possibility of youth. And then you can travel, moving down that road, passing farms and fields, listening to the sound of the countryside, watching, always watching for the flash of quick steps made by winged feet. Are you alone on this road? Do others travel with you? Or do they meet you in passing and move on to other places? Look ahead and you will find a crossroads. When you arrive there, a rough stone pillar stands by the side of the road, a herm marking out this sacred place. Here the travelers gathered to honor Hermes of the roadway, to say a prayer, to leave an offering, a gift to help fellow travelers, human and divine. Look around you. Near the herm you may find many gifts. What has been left here for those who would come after? And what can you leave as a blessing in return? You stand at the crossroads. Other images, other times might arise in your mind. When have you helped a traveler? When have you been a wanderer in need? When have you shared what you had with a stranger? This is a sacred place, a holy place, meant for the remembrance of those things. Let yourself hold that story for a moment. And then the road calls you onward. The dream calls you onward to the edge of a city, to a market square. The flocks are driven to market. You are there too, surrounded by sights and sounds, smells of market day. Look around you. What do you see? What is for sale? What is being bought? Here you can cover your ears and think of a question, think of a worry, a need to know, and wander the paths between stalls to reach the center of the marketplace and drop your hands to let the sound back in, to hear your answer in the noise of the crowd. In the hubbub of barter and buying and selling, they honored Hermes here, the god of exchange, making deals that benefit all parties, trading information, swapping stories, sharing laughter. In the market, people gossip, as they always do. What do you hear? As you wander, you come to a sacred precinct, altars present for the Olympian gods. Well-dressed buyers make offerings to splendid Apollo. But Hermes' altar is tended and visited by craftsmen and merchants, by working people. Will you make an offering here? Take your time. Choose the gods you will honor. And then in the space of a breath, in the blink of an eye, the dream carries you here, away from the ancient world to ours, our own time. Here in the dream, you can see so many things. But this world is different. People huddle in their houses. They go to work grudgingly. Travelers are few. Even before sickness came, travel was often reserved for the rich. And when the rich traveled, they went to places that had already been made just like the places they were coming from. In this time, the merchants have become kings. They've left the craftspeople and the workers behind them in their rise. In this time, the powerful lie without art. Oaths go unmade, unfulfilled. Where is the honoring of Hermes here? But perhaps you know. Perhaps visions arise. You might imagine a scene, the streets alive with protest. A young man sitting at a computer. He is listening to the police radio scanner. He is sending messages to his protesting friends to tell them where to go, how to move, to stay safe, to stay free. You might remember people laughing, sharing the last of their food. Each has but little, but they have made a feast, and nobody goes hungry tonight. You might think of a joke, a mocking of abusive authority, spread as a meme on social media, coming from nothing and nowhere, but traveling across the globe. You might remember a time not very long ago. A police department looking for video evidence of folks protesting who could be prosecuted, and instead finding their online forums flooded with videos of music and dance. You might know a girl who stole an interview suit from her roommate's closet, only later to return it cleaned and pressed. You might take part in online forums where people teach each other how to work around a system that was never meant to help or protect people like them. You might have known a lawyer in her off hours, answering a Reddit post, providing #not-official legal advice. You might have known a doctor who changes the billing code so that an underinsured patient can get a test or a procedure he needs. You might know 1,000 ways that underdogs are inventing new ways to survive. You might know those who have resources and share them. Everyday people who trick the system into saving lives that otherwise would be ignored and discarded. You might have seen the honoring of Hermes in 1,000 ways. Think on these things and look ahead. You are coming to another crossroads. At this place, where two paths meet, stands a three-faced statue of Hermes. He faces each direction you might travel, looking down each road you have not yet taken. Call out to him. Choose your path. You may find the God along the way. You may find that he has been with you all along. What will you say to him? What will you ask? What promises or gifts must you give to this guide and guardian? He may have advice to offer, a challenge to meet, a gift to give. Take time to seek him along this road. To converse, to have that meeting. When you're ready, thank the God, the son of Maya. When you're ready, make ready to return to us. Soon enough, you will awaken, finding yourself comfortably nestled at the gates of dream, stretching and yawning, picking up your belongings, making your way back to the temple space where you began, to that place of safety, shelter, possibility, connection. When you arrive, look around. Has anything changed? Did you bring anything back with you? Take up your place once again in this temple, in this nexus space, in this place of connection, Let your awareness of your breath remind you you are here in spirit with us, but also you are embodied. And when you're ready, take a moment to stretch your physical body, move, call your own name, do whatever you need to do to return to ordinary consciousness. And I'm going to ask now if anyone has learned anything that they want to share, if anyone has anything they want to tell us about where they've been, what they've seen. Now's a good time to do that. You don't have to, of course, but if you have anything that wants to come out, we are listening. So this is our introduction for the community, Introduction to Hermes. And we are considering entering into a patron relationship for the next year. And Hermes is a power who was nominated as a possible patron some months back on the strength of the idea that the world is made harder and worse when we miscommunicate. The world is made harder and worse when we engage in fruitless, artless lying and nonsense. But the world could be made better if we would talk to each other, if we could communicate well and joyfully, if we could find a space where there's honor and reliability and trustworthiness. And so that's part of our work today. That's part of our idea today. And I think Jamie has some other things to say about what it might be like for Gaia community to work with Hermes as a patron.
With Hermes' guidance and inspiration, I believe the community will learn more about using the internet to make our online congregation effective and engaging. I think that he'd help us to dream a better world that is more socially just, that isn't built on the necks of the oppressed. But I also think that he would expect us to be clear communicators, to boost our messages, whether they be about Gaia itself or the causes we care about, beyond our current scope, to be more imaginative about where we say what we're saying. Hermes would expect us to fight miscommunication and, as Kimberly was saying, and the outright lies that are ever present in our society. And that kind of leads rather naturally into an idea of what kind of social justice projects we might do if Hermes were our patron. We might help organizations that are working to bridge the digital gap so that every family has access to the internet in their homes, especially with education possibly being online only, especially if things happen the way we think they might, and schools might not be safe in the fall. So we might support open educational resources and crowdsourced learning initiatives so that students who are learning in their homes will be able to afford the materials they need to be taught at home. We might also explore more transformative justice, and especially we would continue to support the Black Lives Matter movement as part of dreaming a better world. And I just wanted to say that this is obviously not everything. And if there's someone who wants to add to this pitch to maybe make a stump speech, that's what we're going to have time for next, as well as an opportunity to ask questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Aubrey, who is going to run that.
Hi. I have a few questions that have already been sent in by the community. I'm having a fascinating technological relationship with my tripod, as you might have noticed today. One of the first questions that we received was, Hermes is the patron of a lot of things. What would Hermes be asking of us as a community? I feel like Jamie addressed some of that in her pitch that she just made that we all worked on together, but still some of Hermes' angles for 2020. What I personally call my favorite dumpster fire, but that's me, not Hermes. I feel like that was answered pretty well from that pitch, but I am curious to hear what other people from the community, either on the team or in general, would have to say about what they'd want from a Hermes year, because we brought what we thought of. Like, I'm here for Hermes that recognizes that the dumpster fire is already going. Like, are we making marshmallows? Are we putting it out? Are we using it to warm people? But that's not going to be where everyone's coming from, and that's totally okay. I think a definite positive of a 2020 to 2021 Hermes year would be having mediated discussions about it. So if anybody wants to raise their hand about what they'd like to see from a Hermes year as well, one of the advantages of him is that he can go in many directions.
I think a year working with Hermes allows us to work in a lot of this kind of social justice sphere, which we talked about some, but I think it also allows us and encourages us, I think he encourages us to be better magicians if we happen to be magicians. One of the fun things about Hermes is that he is acknowledged to be clever with words in a magical way. One of the kind of fun things about his mythos and his cult is that although he's thought of as being tricky and wily and very sometimes too clever for what the situation calls for, that if he makes an agreement, his word is good. You might not assume anything else other than the word, but his word is good. And I think that's an essential part of magical practice, is making sure your word is good and understanding where you can push on the world and where you can push on ideas to cause something new and different to happen. And so I would hope that if we chose Hermes to be our patron, that that's some work that we could do over the next year. It looks like Barbara is after me.
I have recently seen two examples that call to mind that matrix of electronic communication, in that both Johnson County, Kansas, and Platte County, Missouri, appear to have issued their safety requirement that people wear masks due to the very many emails they received from their constituents, which is very heartening at a time when I personally don't feel like I can go down to the plaza and parade around with a sign, but I do have a keyboard and I do have fingers, and that can be used to apparently make a difference in the world that I suspect is bigger than the total mass of people who actually sent the emails.
We have another question, if we don't have any more answers on that one. I have a rather large answer, but it fits better under a different question. This one I am going to throw towards at least one of our resident magicians. I'm using Google Docs right now, another thing that I'm grateful to Hermes for. Henry Rose would like to know whether or not there are any elemental associations that are traditionally affiliated with Hermes. I usually associate Hermes myself with copper and silver and air, but that's a lot of personal gnosis on my part. My relationship with Hermes started in a way that was before I completely came to terms with my identity as a pagan. So if somebody else would feel comfortable sharing their elemental associations as well, that would be a great way to get a more well-rounded answer.
If your magical practice has a Kabbalistic component to it, you might think of Hermes in terms of Mercury and the sphere of Hod, which is a sphere of thought, glory, and the element there, I believe, is fire. When I think about Hermes as a deity, I'm more inclined to think of him as being more air, but depending on where you're working, it may look different. Matt, do you have any feelings about that? I'm just going to put you on the spot.
Other than a vast amount of agreement, I don't know that I have anything to add to that other than to say copper, of course, one of the great conductors. So Hermes in the realm of the transmission, silver being one of the most pervasive of currencies. So you have the Hermes of the marketplace, and then air where the thoughts flow through. And yes to Hod, very yes to Hod.
Before I move to anyone else, do we have anyone else who wants to contribute to elemental associations, either in the lore or personal, that they have with Hermes? I definitely think of anything used to make computers, as far as any of the rare elements that we use in microchips, in the things that build our phones or computers. Do I personally remember what those are right now? No, I don't.
Is coffee an element? Because I feel that
Coffee and Adderall, if those are elements, I definitely associate them with Hermes. Like Hermes is like my personal liberation from ADHD, moving it from like personal life experience, it's not going so great being an ADHD epileptic, to like, I am an ADHD epileptic magician, this is my superpower. Like, I feel like Hermes is definitely there for everybody who's just a bit fidgety, or maybe a lot fidgety. I think we had Kitty in the queue. We also have a non-question, but I have quite a response to that one, so I would prefer to take it closer to last.
So we're not really currently doing much for children, but if Hermes was our patron, and I know you were talking about education, but I was thinking more about children in Gaia community. What would Hermes recommend or support or might lead us to?
Before I just go into my whole feelings about Hermes and my connection and being like, Hermes and children, does anyone else want to start?
Just briefly, one of the things that comes up for me is the association of learning through play and trying to have a joyful experience of life while we figure out how things work, and sort of allowing kids to be self-directed and get into the things they're interested in. And Aubrey has probably a lot more words about it than I do.
So depending on which lore you read, and there's a lot, and I won't claim to be a classicist, that would be very off base of me. Hermes is regarded as either growing up very alone for the brief period of time before he snatched some cattle from his half-brother to get his attention, or Hermes was, very involved in his community as a young child, moving up through taking on students like Asclepius, the first of the doctors who are elevated to deities. I feel like Hermes's position as far as kid space, first, I want to just lead this. I'm not currently on the kid space community. This is not a binding contract to hold kid space community to any sort of involvement that they are not feeling down for, up for, technologically, advanced enough for, time enough for, funds enough for. But what I can say as far as what I could do and what I feel like Hermes would do in this sort of situation, and I hope that I don't get smited for saying that, but I pray on it a lot. I've currently been living 2 miles to the east of 2 of my kids, and 2 miles to the west of 3 of my kids. I have step kids basically through a partner, and I have godchildren. They range in age from 2 to 22, with one of the 2-year-olds being theirs. And we have learned a lot about technology in the last couple of months being separated, because I'm an immunocompromised person, and so are adults in both of those respective households. So we've had to maintain distance for a majority of the time since March 11th when I got sick. I feel like some of the things that we can do as people who are Gaians, as people who are working with Hermes, is to recognize that this is a very scary time and to work on that with the kids, but not in a way where we're asking them to solve it. I feel like I see so much media right now saying, hey kids, it's your responsibility to change this. On the one hand, I want people like myself who are millennials, who are actually adults, to go out and vote. And I want Gen Z to be aware of the fact that there's, gun violence in schools, but they are aware, they go to school. I want them to be aware that there is biased media sources, but they're aware. They are who taught me how to use Instagram to fact check information on whether or not that Twitter was accurate, and do reverse image searches to run it through Snopes and then try to pass it through New York Times using our library portal. And so I feel like part of it is just learning from them and giving them an opportunity to participate more in creating the rituals and programs we already have. I mean, there's a context for you churches doing that all over the country as far as bringing kids in if they want to, but also placing emphasis on them for, doing things like we currently hold Joys and Concerns on Thursdays for the adults. I feel like holding a, monthly or quarterly at the very least Joys and Concerns for the kids could be great. We could help set up for the parents, any parents that don't have Zoom available, trying to figure out what we can do as individuals autonomously in the community to try to help provide those resources. We could meet on spaces, one of the most popular free libraries, as in free of censorship, in the world is hosted on a Minecraft server, and journalists write out, sometimes with the assistance of children, the stories that are in the news sources, because it is very hard to censor a Minecraft portal to appropriately leave out information on various things that have changed. So there's already a lot of teenagers and tweens who are interested in that sort of work that I feel like would be more than excited to bring us in, but also we could introduce kids to it if they wanted to do it. As far as providing more interpersonal support and support during ritual, I mean, a lot of the kids in our community, to my understanding, might have access to things like phones. If they don't have a phone, they have they sometimes have iPods. iPods can connect to Zoom in a limited way. We could put out more information on how parents could connect their kids using devices that don't result in the kids having kind of free-for-all if that's not age appropriate, and helping provide some information on that. The UUA has some really good guidance, as does a lot of online open educational resources, which is sort of my third angle as far as like bringing kids more in on ritual. We can do that as far as having the kids involved in planning if they want to on more of them, but as well as, providing, we have a Zoom room, which means that we don't have to schedule around a physical space as often. So this is a great opportunity if we wanted to have separate evenings where we're doing kids programming, where we're like, okay, we're going to play Carcassonne this evening. We're going to have a discussion, talking about feelings while we do that. As far as the human resources, that's up to all of us. The adults who are in this room, the adults who aren't, people who want to be there and who have the capacity. And some of it's just going to be providing support for one another in the informal ways I think we already have, but making that easier using the technology we have. As far as if somebody's got some extra food that they got from Costco, does somebody need some extra food that they're getting from Costco? That sort of thing. As far as open educational resources, OER are open source textbooks that are usually put together through no paid means, or they're not contributed to by the people who are receiving them, that reduce textbook costs. Last time I was in college, which I originally started taking college courses in high school due to my own personal path, textbooks cost as much as my tuition. And there are initiatives all over the United States right now that are bringing teens together who are bored and don't like that they have copy pasta, as one kid brought up to me, like copy pasta problems with their textbooks not being accurate, not matching actually their news sources, referencing dead links, as well as needing to figure out hosting costs for that, needing to figure out like teaching kids that media literacy. These OER resources are so well spread, and often the sort of assistance they need from groups that want to provide social justice are things that either we can involve the kids in on, or at the very least, if we have kids that don't have textbooks for their courses, there might be an OER that can help. So as far as homework help, that's something that a lot of libraries are still doing, and we could provide some of the conduit for connecting kids with that. But my main thing would be just like trying to figure out what the kids want first, you know, because they're gonna know. That was a big ramble. Anyways, Hermes grew up as a like tiny kid who didn't grow up with his dad or his half brother, who's called the shiny one all the time. Like, I have so many half sibling feelings about Hermes. Like, Hermes acted out for a reason. Hermes still acts out for a reason. Like, there, you know, anybody who behaves badly has a good reason. There's no such thing as laziness, and evil is not the realm of children. You know, adults sometimes figure that out, but kids are just, they're tired, they're pooped, they want to go outside.
So it sounded like a lot of that was, we would be challenged to provide technologically enhanced services for the kids of our community and other kids that we could help. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that that is something that if we think within the context of we need to develop a full program, I think that's going to overwhelm us. And I think that it is understandably overwhelming. We're all navigating living in this new space. But I think if we try to break it down piece by piece, we're going to have a games night for the kids this week, you know, or within the next 2 weeks. We're going to have a time for the kids to talk about how they're feeling. I think that's something that we could provide. We would have to check with all the people who are signed up. I know that I personally would be more than thrilled to help connect any kids with resources they need for school, because our library is closed, but it doesn't mean that the library online is closed.
I think, you know, right now online, I agree with Aubrey and stuff, but I just mean in the future, maybe, hopefully in the coming year, the end of Hermes year, if we all meet in person, what I know my kids would like is to have, you know, if it's not really a ritual in the main room that kids can participate in, it would be good for them to have like a kids version or some sort of educational thing, because, you know, I take my kids to lots of different religious organizations, and I feel like they've kind of developed this vibe like Gaia is, where they just screw around in a room for a while, and that's actually not that fun for them in the end, you know. So I want, hopefully, when we all come together and meet in person again, that it can be, you know, more spiritual for the kids' space.
I just wanted to, as Greta pointed out, her 2 kids come occasionally, and my Drayton comes when we meet in person all the time. Well, not all the time, you know, grandma's more important. But anyway, he gets too much screen time. So I'm concerned with having another screen thing. So I'm not really sure. Hopefully we can meet in person again. So, yep, that's all I wanted to say.
I hope so too. I'm totally for both of the suggestions you and Greta made. I certainly can't imagine Hermes being like, I'm not for children meeting in person, or, you know, being able to do things that are educationally relevant and connect them with their elder community. I think that Hermes is for an intergenerational vibe. You know, there's multiple stories of Hermes portraying himself at multiple ages. I feel like the concept of that separation, you know, is about what is developmentally appropriate, not about like, you know, let's just whatever over here, you know. And yeah, I hear your concern about the too much screen time. I don't know how to solve it from over here. I am living in a very different pandemic projection in Portland. We are not anticipating, most epidemiologists I know up here, us having any sort of social circumstances being actually safe for a larger portion of the community through at least April at the earliest. So
Yeah, certainly the question of how do we usefully provide programming and opportunities and resources for kids is going to be a question that we deal with over the next year, regardless of who we choose as patron. And we tend to focus on the technology aspect of working with Hermes and the communications aspect because it's been so valuable for us as adults. But I think there's another, I think there are other paths available to us as well. And a lot of that is going to be a challenge for us over the next year. How can we get together in a useful way? How is that going to happen for us and for our kids? But I think it is a very good thing to keep track of, that we have transitioned over to providing a lot of adult services, and we have not been able to provide the same level of support for our kids up to this point. So I think that is something really good to keep in mind. Well, fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, to the person who's heading out, thank you for coming to Ritual.
We are going a bit longer than I had anticipated, but it sounds like we have one more question, so let's do that.
One last question that we had is, what makes a god of thieves a good fit for a church based on integrity and honesty? I have watched this question get asked a lot of times, and I have a lot of feelings about it. I think a lot of it comes down to, a lot of what I'm about to be talking about is pulling from Norman O. Brown's Hermes the Thief. None of it is direct quotes, but if you want to learn more about what I'm saying and you go, huh? I recommend checking it out. It's on Google Books as well as a couple of other places. The conception in most of the ancient Greek texts of what a definition of stealthy is, or a thief, is much wider than our definition would be in modern times, let alone modern America. Nevertheless, I think if you asked me a year ago, we're doing, Hermes, we're going to have Hermes in God auction, how should we respond to this question? I would have told you what I'm about to tell you. The fact that the conception of property being as personal as it is, and the concept of theft being a non-ritual aspect, is rather new, at least within the context of Greece. Hermes's position when he's referenced as cattle stealing, other than his position with Apollo, which is usually indicated as basically a job interview. He's getting Apollo's attention, he's getting Zeus's attention, he's getting himself some milk because he's a child, he's settling some needs he has, and he's settling some emotional needs he has. Hermes is usually mentioned as a cattle rustler or a thief within the context of one of two things. One, there was a festival that involved within the community of Arcadia the theft of cattle. And it was a consensual, it was more of a theatric religious theater. Something agreed upon by the community. Nobody's cows were just getting straight up gone, to my understanding. Now that's going to sound a bit like a technicality. The second part is really a technicality, but I think it's an important one. If we recognize the concept of stealthy as being the concept of any secret action, which it was viewed as any secret action, the concept of lying, deceit, and theft are like this with magic in many ancient texts, including the concept of guile. It changes when you get into, Hesiod's got some interpretations I don't still agree with, where he associates having guiles with having womanly guiles. And there is definitely a sexist bent to it in some of the interpretations. That said, Hermes as a thief is Hermes who is skillful with the oath. Hermes who is skillful at how to present the truth. Hermes in this representation is much closer to a lawyer. He's much closer to any public defender you've ever met, anybody, any parent in IEP, any person who has been stopped by the police for a stop and frisk or a stoplight stop, who's going, okay, I'm maybe not going to get into where I just was. It was a completely appropriate place, but they're not going to understand why I was at the hacker cafe. That's not going to look good. It's about presenting the section of the truth that is relevant to the question. And I know that I'm not doing so great at that right now, working on it. But if you conceive of theft in this larger area that's in the matter of bindings, that's in the matter of, Hermes was regarded as skillful partially because he understood that if you don't lay it out in the contract, it's not happening. If you don't take good documentation, if you don't take good notes, if you don't update the Google Doc, put it on the website, send the email, you know, figure out the thing ahead of time and lay out what you're going to do, not only is it going to be something that you can't hold people to, it's not something you're going to hold yourself to. And it's not something that you as a community can conceivably hold on to together. And so his concept of being skillful with the oath is inherently tied to, in most of the text, this concept of thievery or this concept of deceit, because they didn't have a separate word yet for, you know, using of advocacy language. They didn't have words like buzzwords, marketing, legal obligation. At this point, you know, the capacity to be able to win by cunning as opposed to being able to win by brawn was a very typically anti-hero sort of trait. I mean, Odysseus was viewed through kind of like yikesy eyes by a lot of people, because not because of the fact that he resulted in the blinding of a cyclops, or he was separated from his wife for this long period of time while his buddies were turned into pigs and he was hanging out with Circe. It was because of the fact that he's solving things by figuring, like, how can I technically get through to the truth here? Like, that was the part that was contentious about Odysseus, who is sometimes regarded as being a grandson of Hermes. And that's what's viewed as being contentious about Hermes himself, this view of Hermes as a thief and that being a bad thing is heavily influenced by Athens taking over as a major power in Greece. He's from Arcadia, where those traditions were more baked into the culture. You know, Hermes' relationship with, Athens is not different because of the fact that he's lying in Athens and not in Arcadia, or he's lying in Arcadia and not in Athens. It's, if I steal my sister's hairbrush and we have an agreement that she can come and grab stuff from my room and I can come and grab stuff from her room, that's not going to be the same as me coming into your house, or me, and my computer is going out.
I think we may have lost Aubrey. I'm going to try to sum up what Aubrey is saying then. When we talk about Hermes as a thief, we are not talking about Hermes being a person who pulls a gun on you and carjacks you at a light. We are talking about a range of behaviors and things that often are being interpreted differently in Greece than they are today. There's another aspect of it that I think Aubrey probably was going to get to, which is that it has to do with class, with social class. There's a read of Hermes' theft of Apollo's cattle as being a metaphor and a way of understanding how the kind of the working class gets into it with the aristocracy, and how the theft that's really going on there is the working class claiming a piece of power, claiming a seat at the political table, and how that ties in with the transition from Athens being led by kings and the aristocratic class to Athens being led by a democratically elected leader, and how a great many things that the new emerging middle class, the emerging political class was doing were thought of as being essentially the same as theft. They had a lot of sense that buying and selling was theft, that holding property within your family instead of holding it individually was theft. And so you got to kind of look at that too. In other contexts, Hermes is held as being a very high integrity person. He's one of the people that enforces oaths. He's one of the people that enforces contracts and negotiations. So I think we look at, with systems and with power and with people who have the ability to make your life very hard and say, okay, yeah, you are a sneaky dude, and sometimes that's what we want. When the world is not working the way it ought to, and the official channels don't get you what you need to survive or have equality or have representation, you start looking at other methods. And so when we talk about Hermes the thief, that's one of the things we're talking about. long answer. Barbara says, sounds like with Hermes we may be having a very heady and we may be very heady and linear in a Hermes year, which I think we have been very heady today, trying to tell a lot of stories, but I think that the experience of Hermes is often a lot more flexible and a lot more free-flowing and energy involved than what we've done today. So I think we wanted to make sure that people heard stories and that people had information today, which is a lot of it.
I have a bit of a response to Barbara, if that's okay. I just wanted to say that we can't forget that Hermes is a magician, and there's a lot of opportunities to work with him and do magic during the year. And Hermes is a psychopomp, which is all about helping the deceased make their way into the underworld, and coming back again is something that he can do, which is going to serve us well when we do things where we're talking about our ancestors and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's an aspect we didn't even address. Hermes wears a lot of hats. I'm going to hand back over to Aubrey and let Aubrey finish this up here.
Hi, that was Pizza Not Omen, care of my phone, which is mimicking the dumpster fire that is 2020 so far, that we are turning into our magical bonfire. That's kind of my angle on Hermes. It sounds like from the end of what I caught from Kimberly is that you already got into sort of the interpretation, like you wrapped up the interpretations being different. I am speaking right now on behalf of me and my interpretation of Hermes, but why I would like to see Hermes is kind of not necessarily heady and linear. I mean, yes, he can help with the OER. He can help with providing more services for our kids. It can help with teaching us how to organize more effectively using these technological tools so that not only will we really use them during the time that we're inside together, but also afterwards. As somebody who's disabled, when I think about Hermes, I think about lockpicks. I think about the fact that he is a god of keys. I think about the fact that he's a god of USBs. I think about the fact that sort of this two-end side of Hermes being a thief is a positive. One is that a thief knows how to access things. And as someone who grew up working class, yes, I am entirely for using the appropriate channels in the appropriate ways. But we are currently in a political climate where a lot of the appropriate channels are breaking down at inappropriately high speeds that are frankly unprecedented since the invention of the computer. We actually are having some slower in some states like wait times for unemployment. We're having more difficulty with people trying to renew various like green card and residency information. We're having difficulty with kids who can't get their IEPs granted using technology that we've had since the 1990s in certain areas. And the people that I see responding to that are sometimes the people that I would expect and that I'm grateful for. It's the teachers, it's the politicians, it's the people who are community organizers, our doctors, our epidemiologists, but sometimes you need someone who's that and also sometimes a thief. Some of the teachers I know who have figured out how to get, education out to their students are the teachers who are willing to say, I'm going to get permission directly from the author to get this paper because the entire program that's pulled from is just shut down from overuse. It is the scientist who discovered that COVID-19 had made groundfall in the United States was a Seattle epidemiology team that was working on a flu study that specifically did not have permission to test samples for anything other than the flu. They alerted the CDC when they had the information that said, this is mutating at an abnormal rate. We've had recent foreign travel, and this looks like a SARS variant virus. And they were told, don't look into it. We're not looking into it. Don't worry about it. And they had more and more samples come up. And these scientists decided we have to let people know. Like, we will risk our ability to practice research, our ability to have a clinical lab, but we need to let people know. And that information leak is why the United States was not a further 4 months behind. It is why in Oregon and Washington, we had the capabilities that we had. And that took some people looking at the rules and going, okay, if the rules are not serving the will of the people, and the rules are not keeping people safe, and the rules are not providing for people, we got to steal ourselves some science here. Like, they were like, we're going to steal ourselves some epidemiology, and they didn't reveal those people's privileged patient information, which is the reason for, you know, one of the main reasons for those studies being the way they are. They managed to protect that privacy, but they said, no, this information needs to get out. And it's that, and our journalists who've made the same decisions, and our lawyers who've made the same decisions, filing things against their superior attorney's, you know, advisement, that are who I think of when I think of Hermes. They're people who are like, I want to work within the law. I want to follow the code, but frankly, as Gaians, we're in a unique position being Unitarian Universalists and pagans to know what it's like to be on the outside, but sometimes have access to resources on the inside. And I am completely not advocating any sort of behavior that would endanger anyone's livelihood, their sense of ethics, but we have a lot of varieties of training and the capacity to use that, but also to ask for that from others. You know, they're doing crowdsourced contact tracing here for months before they ended up doing any formal contact tracing. It's largely Google Docs and phone calls. It's people who put together the free lunch, you know, programs here in the area before the school districts got it together, who organized because they went, I've got some food that our business isn't using. And that's who I think of when I think of Hermes the thief. He wants to work with the usual angles, but he's willing to nod if he has to. And I think that's the world we're in right now. I think that's the world we'll be going into as we leave, you know, as we leave our quarantines and enter back into the world, is we're still going to have problems that we need abnormal and creative solutions to.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your questions, and thanks for sticking with us and thinking about how we answer them. Those are good questions. But we're coming to the end of our time together. So I'd like to ask folks to reorient a little bit, to return to their visualized temple space, their circle space, as we begin the process of closing it down together.
We thank Hermes the messenger, Hermes the communicator, who has been with us from the days of smoke signals to today's busy internet. Thank you for lending your power and inspiration to today's work.
And we thank Hermes the magician, the herald of possibility and change. Thank you for lending your power and inspiration to today's work.
We thank Hermes the thief, the clever one who teaches us to see the way to move forward. Thank you for lending your power and inspiration to today's work.
Hail Hermes.
We thank the spirits of Earth for grounding us in our work while allowing us to connect in the cloud. Hail and well met, Earth. We thank the spirits of water for cooling us in our work. Hail and well met, water. We thank the spirits of fire for carrying us in all of this data while we do our work. Hail and well met, fire. We thank the spirits of air for keeping us breathing and connected in our breath while allowing us to do this work. Hail and well met, air.
And we now open our circle. Let us take back that energy that we have given it, enriched and changed. Return our attention away from this magical meeting place to our own separate homes, where we remain apart but together, a community. Our circle is open.
Blessed be.
We're going to end with our usual kinds of words. We can probably do the short form of our usual closing. And if you'll just repeat after me. Our circle is open, yet unbroken.
Our circle is open,
yet unbroken.
May the peace of the goddess go in our hearts.
May
The peace of the goddesses go in our hearts.
And the dance of the god enliven our days.
Dance of gods enliven our days.
And may we care for the earth and each other.
And may we
May we care for the earth And each other.
Because our lives depend on it.
Because
Because
our
our
lives
lives
depend
depend
on
on it.
Merry meet.
Meet
Merry
Part.
Very part.
and marry me again.
And
everybody.